So today we're going to be talking about B.F. Skinner. That's the pioneer psychologist that I chose. I am Darian Sanders. I made this presentation, and we'll get started. So the theory founded by B.F. Skinner was the theory of behaviorism, so also known as the theory of learning. So verywellmind.com states that according to B.F. Skinner's theory of learning, our behaviors are developed or conditioned through reinforcements. So he, being B.F. Skinner, referred to this process as operant conditioning. So the term operant refers to any behavior that acts on the environment and leads to consequences. Let's get into it. So B.F. Skinner's early life. So he was born in March 20th of 1904 in Susquehanna, Pennsylvania. His mother and father were Grace and William Skinner. His dad was an up-and-coming lawyer, and his mother was a housewife. He also had a younger brother, and him being B.F. Skinner, would go on to describe his childhood as warm and stable. While he was a child, he did enjoy building things, exploring the countryside, inventing, all of those fun, awesome things that we love about him today. So B.F.'s early professional and personal life. So B.F. finished Hamilton College in 1926, where he majored in English and wrote and edited for the college literary magazine. After he graduated, he tried to take on the writers and authors career path, but it didn't pan out the way he had hoped, so he decided to go back to school and get his graduate degree, his master's, from Harvard in 1928. After that, he got his doctorate at Harvard in 1931, and after that, he had 5 years of research fellowships also at Harvard. He then went on to have to teach at the University of Minnesota in 1946, followed by teaching at the Indiana University. He also, in this time, married Yvonne Eve Blue in 1936, so they had been married about 10 years at this time. Yvonne and B.F. later went on to have a daughter, Julie, born in 1938, and a daughter, Deborah, born in 1944. And after Indiana University, he returned to Harvard as professor in 1948, and he achieved the title Edgar Pierce Professor of Psychology at Harvard from 1958 until he retired in 1974. So, let's talk about B.F. Skinner's educational psychologist career. So, like we previously said, he taught at the University of Minnesota, followed by Indiana University, ending at Harvard University. So first I want to talk about the Skinner box. In this, to the right, you can see that there's a rat and a pigeon in a box. We'll talk about that in a second. But basically, he discovered that there was a more objective and measured way to study behavior, so he used rats and pigeons. For the rats, they discovered and used to a level in the box which dispensed food at varying intervals. The pigeons pecked at a disc to gain access to food. So, some form of reinforcement was crucial in learning new behaviors. He discovered both of this with the pigeon and the rat. He also discovered that learned responses to an environment rather than involuntary responses to stimuli. So, he later went on to have something called Project Pigeon in 1944. So, World War II broke out, and he wanted to help out, and so he came up with this Project Pigeon, where he wanted to train pigeons to guide bombs. So he trained pigeons to keep pecking at a target that would guide a missile onto an enemy ship. In this experiment, he discovered that pigeons pecked reliably, even when falling rapidly and working with warlike noise all around them. However, this project was discontinued, but it did gain useful information. So B.F. Skinner himself said that the research that I described in the behavior of organisms appeared in a new light. It was no longer merely an experimental analysis. It had given a rise to a technology. After this, Skinner never worked with rats again. Skinner later went on to create the baby tender, or the air box. So Yvonne, his wife, whenever she was pregnant with their second child, she requested that B.F. Invent a crib that wouldn't allow the baby to get stuck in the bars, or a crib that would allow blankets to suffocate the baby. So B.F. successfully did this, and he created an enclosed and heated crib with a plexiglass window. And he made sure that Deborah, his second daughter, only used it as a bed and not a playpen. However, rumors started that Skinner experimented on his daughter or raised her in a box, and that she grew up angry and disturbed, all of which are false according to Deborah and Julie, the sisters. So, He later went on to create something called teaching machines and programmed instruction. So while visiting his daughter's math class, he noticed that some kids in the math class zoomed through problems while others were utterly confused. So he created the teaching machines. So in this, he discovered that there's a delay of reinforcement and it hampers the performance. So students had to answer a whole page before getting feedback. So he wanted to create something for teachers and for students that gave the child or student feedback whenever they finished a question. That way they don't do the whole worksheet wrong and have to redo it all. However, he did realize that teachers couldn't be with 20 or 30 kids at once to give them that individual feedback that they need. So this is when the first teaching machine was invented. It presented problems in random order for students to do, with feedback after each problem. It did not teach a new behavior, however, it gave more practice on skills already learned. Next, he went on to create programmed instruction. So students responded to material broken into small steps, similar to what a skilled tutor would ask of a student working with one student at a time. The first responses of each sequence were prompted, but as performance improved, less and less help was given. By the end, a student was doing something he or she could not have done at the beginning. So when he gives this feedback after each question, and then he gives the student help, the better they do, the less help they get, and in the end, that student is able to do something that they could not have done at the beginning because they're getting that feedback for each individual question. B.F. Skinner's claim to fame was the theory of behaviorism. So NU.edu states that it focuses on how people learn through their interactions with the environment. It's based on the idea that all behaviors are acquired through conditioning, which is a process of reinforcement and punishment. According to this theory, learning is a change in observable behavior that results from experience. He's also famous for a book that he wrote and was published in 1948 called The Walden Two. Basically, quick Cliff Note version, pretty much, is that it's about a soldier who comes back from war and invites others to this community known as the Walden Two. However, this community is supposed to have about 1,000 members in it. However, all aspects of the community have been planned. So the way they raise their children, the way they eat, the way they communicate, everything has been planned. And it's one of Skinner's best known works. It has its criticisms, but also its praises, for showing that you can shape anything the way you want it to be and have something turn out the way you want it to be if it's changed, if it's a change in observable behavior that results from experience. So, who influenced B.F. Skinner? John B. Watson and Ivan Pavlov were the two biggest influences in B.F. Skinner's career. So basically, John B. Watson's whole thing was that, in a nutshell, he believed that if he was given a dozen healthy infants, he could shape them to be anything: doctors, lawyers, beggars, artists, or thieves, regardless of their background or genetic predispositions. So for lack of better words, he believed that nature did not play as big of a role as nurture. If he had something that he could shape from the ground up, he can make it whatever. Ivan Pavlov, however, also worked on conditioned reflex. So he trained a hungry dog to salivate at the sound of a bell or buzzer, which was previously associated with the sight of food. So he took this dog, and every time he rang a bell or buzzed something, he gave the dog food. And then he took that food away, but still every time he rung that bell or buzzed the buzzer, the dog still salivated because that's what it expected, right? That was the conditioned reflex. So Pavlov and Watson focused on the classical conditioning, and Skinner focused on the operant conditioning. So they studied how behaviors are influenced by stimuli and reinforcers, Pavlov and Watson with reflexes, and then Skinner with consequences. So Skinner built all of his work on the behaviorist theories of Ivan Pavlov and John Watson, as he studied the connection between stimuli and observable behavior in rats, which led to his Skinner box, which it levers. With its levers and food pellets, the box allows precise measurement and control of the experimental conditions. So basically, he took the works of Watson and Pavlov and just built onto them and got research based off of them, and really that influenced all of his behavioral and behaviorist theories. So we're really thankful for that. In his later life, he organizes his life's knowledge and achievements and research findings in a series of autobiographies that we're thankful to have now. He continued to be active in the field of psychology until he was unfortunately diagnosed with leukemia in 1989. He did try to stay as active as he could, but it wasn't realistic to stay as active as he was. And then unfortunately, he died at his Cambridge, Massachusetts home on August 18th of 1990. According to bfskinner.com, it said that at the American Psychological Association, which was 10 days before he died, he gave a talk before a crowded auditorium. He finished the article from which the talk was taken on August 18th, 1990, the day he died. So this man literally worked his entire life on this behaviorist theories. It's insane. It's awesome. He would influence on current teaching practices. So teachers wanting to see specific behaviors out of students, we need to understand these positive rewards and negative consequences that B.F. Skinner is like showing us. So they decrease unwanted actions and increase desired actions. So with B.F. Skinner's findings, we find that motivation is needed for students to behave a certain way. And that's the foundation of B.F. Skinner's theory, right? So if we want a behavior, we have to give rewards or negative consequences. And we know that because of his influence and because of his research findings. It's awesome. We're so thankful for it. And then this is my big bibliography of all of my citations. I think I have 12 maybe. And that is it. And I appreciate you so much for listening. Thank you.